All right, we're recording. So first off, welcome. Thank you for everybody for joining us on this call and everybody who will be joining us later on. Really excited to provide some insight from decision makers that are currently in the sports industry. We're probably going to try to fit around 4 hours of material into about 40 minutes here and leave some time at the end for some open-ended question and answer before the end of the hour. Before we get started, I do want to make a quick disclaimer that any views expressed by the panelists are solely ours and do not necessarily reflect those of our organizations. So with that being said, let's get started. I'll share my screen here. Everybody see that?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. All right. So first off, again, this webinar is going to be focused on introducing whether you're currently in the sports industry or looking to break into the sports industry, some tips and tricks on how to make the most of the opportunities presented to you. So without further ado, I want to introduce the panelists with us today. Anthony Whaley is currently the Vice President of Ticket Sales for the WNBA Chicago Sky. He has over 15 years of experience in senior management in retail, sales, and people development. Prior to working at the Sky, he was previously at Highland Ventures Ltd. As a district manager of 18 locations, over 90 employees, and over $9 million of revenue generated annually. While working for Highland Ventures, he was recognized in 2012 and 2015 as District Manager of the Year in Illinois and Wisconsin. So Anthony, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Second up, we have Jim Berta. Jim Berta is the current CEO of Hartford Athletic of the USL. Jim's career in sports leadership is varied, including launching a brand new professional brand, the New York Riptide of the NLL, National Lacrosse League, as Chief Business Officer, while also being Chief Revenue Officer at GF Sports. Previously, he was the Chief Revenue Officer for the Chicago Sky of the WNBA and the U.S. Promotions Director for Wilson Sporting Goods. Like Anthony, Jim spent time outside of sports at Highland Ventures, where he truly learned next-level people leadership and development, overseeing 55-plus retail store locations housing over 455 employees. So Jim, thank you for taking the time today.
It's great to be here. Thanks, Brian.
And finally, for those who don't know, Brian Van Bosch, I'm currently the new business development manager for the Minnesota Twins and joined prior to the 2019 season. Prior to that, I fortunately spent 8 years selling and managing as the new business development manager for the Chicago Sky, where I had the opportunity to work with the other two panelists you see here today. Prior to the Sky, I also spent 2 years in minor league baseball with a couple of independent teams. Jumping right into some of the topics that we're going to cover today, I'm going to go over resumes and applications and that overall process. Where exactly should you be applying to find these jobs? Interviews, kind of a 101 process of how to go through interviews. Determining the right organization to work for. Should you just pick any old organization, or what should you be looking for in the right organization? What to do starting out in your new role. And finally, again, going to leave it open-ended Q&A. So if you see at the bottom right on most of your, for those of you attending, on the bottom right of your screen, you'll see there's a chat function that you can chat into all the panelists today, or you can use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen to ask a question of the panelists. We will get to those if we don't already cover them during the presentation. We'll be sure to get to those as soon as we can during the Q&A session. So getting right into it, resume and application, obviously it's a starting point for a lot of people who are searching for their new job. Want to talk first a little bit about steps before you even apply. People assume that applying is the first step, but my first question for both of you, are there any steps candidates should take before they begin applying for jobs?
Go ahead, Anthony.
All right. Yeah, just do a lot of research on the company as much as possible, much of the team as much as possible. You want to make sure that, because a lot of times a job looks great on paper, but you want to make sure that the culture of what you're trying to get in is something that you want to be a part of. And so I would do research on finding out who's in management, who's the people in the upper management, what jobs they've held before, just the overall culture. If the people that were there, if they enjoyed the job, the things that they liked about the job. Usually, you can do some research and find out, how long they were there and where they went after that. That type of stuff.
Mhm. And then I think the other steps before applying, the other maybe two things to add to that are make sure as you do these steps, you do them very quickly, because good positions can fill very quickly, without a doubt. It's a very competitive field in the sports field. And then the second is, before you apply, really look to network. If you can get that warm introduction to your application that'll stand out over the anywhere from 30 to 200 applications, that's a huge advantage. So you either would see if you know someone within the organization, or if you don't, it doesn't hurt on LinkedIn, the business site, to absolutely say, hey, listen, I'm looking into the Chicago Sky. Does anyone of my contacts know anyone at the Chicago Sky that I could have a brief conversation with? And that's very helpful.
Yeah, excellent. I'm glad, Anthony, you brought up a little bit about culture, which we'll cover later. And Jim, that's going to lead us into our second question. Kind of my thoughts on the matter. I think first off is meeting the minimum qualifications. Most jobs kind of ask for certain qualifications they want you to have. And I know you guys have probably experienced this. We get a lot of resumes where people aren't necessarily a fit for the job, or there isn't an explanation why they're actually applying for the job. They just apply for any old job out there. Make sure the job is something that you actively want to do for the long term, or at least something that you can see yourself wanting to do. Understand the role and specific tasks the job entails. Are you comfortable with what is expected? We've had people that come in and aren't necessarily comfortable, and it's shocking that they didn't know what they were getting themselves into. For instance, if you hate talking on the phone and you don't like talking to people face to face, sales probably isn't the best role for you, right? So going off of what Jim said and kind of what employees look for, specifically on a resume, to you guys, what do you guys look for when it comes to a resume? What exactly makes a resume stand out?
I'll jump in first on this one. Absolutely, especially if there's a significant amount of applications for a position, you have to understand that most are not going to look through the entire resume. They're really going to look through the very top part, without a doubt. And while being potentially an entry level out of college, a lot of college students put their college education first. Do that if you think that's the most impressive part of your background. But for the most part, what employers look for is what you've done and how well you quantify it. So final example of that would be, let's say you're looking at an operations position and you were a operations intern. And if you say, as an operations intern, and you list a lot of the stuff that you did, that's fine. But then if you quantify it and say, I was an operations intern for a 15,000 seat arena to over 150,000 fans, and now you've quantified the level of what you were helping to operate, that's someone I want to talk to.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I need to update my resume because my college is listed at the top. So thanks for that. Thanks for that update.
I'm going to add to that. I think exactly what Jim said. Like, if you believe that where you attended college and what you did was important, that should be first. But also the two are like, if you get resumes and they're like 2-3 pages long, that's a absolute no for me. It's like it kind of comes off, and it's just my view, that you're just trying to brag on yourself. What I want to see is what is most important to you, and I want to see like 2 or 3 bullet points of what you've done that has to do with the position that you're applying for. That kind of stuff will jump off the page. Like I'll take from Jim trained me on this, because Jim taught me a lot of different things. Like your sales stuff that you have in there is gonna, if you're going for a sales position, seeing what you did in sales right at the top is gonna make it jump off the page at me, where I'm gonna look at it and go, I need to talk directly to this person.
Absolutely. I actually had the opportunity to reach out to some of my contacts in the HR industry, asking them specifically what they look for as well. And some of the positives they look for is that the essential info is clearly stated. Again, meeting minimum requirements. Your work is organized chronologically by most recent job or most relevant job to the job you're applying for. Providing specific detail of previous work to understand how those skills are transferable to the job that you are applying for. And really, ultimately, the first bullet point of each job should cover the most relevant aspect of the job that you are applying for. Some of the red flags they look for, some of the don'ts. Obviously, typos, standard grammatical errors, an objective statement that's very bland, and you could tell that they just copy and pasted they use the same one for every resume they give out, and maybe just puts the team name in there. Employers can notice that. Job hoppers who every 3 to 6 months leave a job without a generic explanation of why that was the case. We understand things happen in life, especially with the time we're in, but needing some explanation on that. And overall, applying to too many positions with a company. If you apply to 4 or 5 positions within a company, you're not really specialized in any one. So that's sort of coming off as just a career grab.
That's a good point.
I'm going to do a quick demonstration here to showcase for all those on the call exactly what it looks like when a decision maker is looking at resumes. So for this example, we're going to pull up 2 resumes, and let's assume, Anthony and Jim, that this individual is applying for a full-time sales position, and you have over 100 resumes to look through. So in real time, take us through when you make that decision and why you made that decision.
Oh, geez. I'm sorry.
You just aged and you dated us.
I know.
Mm-hmm. Well, I right away look at the 6+ years experience,
Mm-hmm.
In a retail environment. I like that. That's great that there's some experience. I'm not even reading the rest, and I'm moving down already. And I want to look at like what this person did and quantify. And now
Exactly. I would at least move them to the interview phase.
Yeah. And then as soon as I saw that they assisted an average of 40 customers, they just quantified something for me. I would definitely take them to the next phase right there. Those 2 sentences, and I'm done. I'm not looking at anything else.
Yeah, I'll probably read that second sentence too. How it says they're recognized for their ability to communicate with customers and provide it like that is, because that's what we do. We're in sales. You're creating relationships with people, being able to talk to people and create that relationship. So yeah, this would be something that right away I'd be like, yeah, I need to talk to this person.
And so a perfect example, in that case, it took us all of 15 seconds, maybe 17 for Anthony to put his glasses on, but it took us all 15 seconds to make a decision on that resume. 80% of the resume didn't even get read until you get to the interview phase. Once you get to the interview phase, more of the resume will be read. So here's an example of number 2. Again, this is for a sales role full-time.
Human resource manager. Did hiring. None of this stuff screams that they've done sales or they're going to be able to do sales.
I stopped, and it was also a little too confusing.
Yeah.
Too much bullet pointed information left and right, and I sort of stopped reading.
Yep, absolutely. So again, you could see 15 seconds maybe before a decision was made, and sometimes it's even quicker than that when employers have to go through 100+ resumes, 200+ resumes. I know when I was with the Sky, we routinely had over 100 people apply for a full-time position. Here with the Twins, I think we had the position open for a little bit longer, and we got up to almost 250 resumes. And so having to sift through all those, you got to stand out. Want to talk really briefly about kind of resumes versus cover letters. And sometimes for a job, people will be asked to provide a cover letter. Everyone has a resume. Sometimes candidates will have a cover letter. What makes a cover letter successful and help a candidate stand out? We just talked about how quickly people look through resumes. Why put a cover letter in, and how does it stand out?
I'll let Jim take this one.
The cover letter, boy, if you're going to write a cover letter, I would either only do it if A, it is requested by the employer, or B, you're an exceptional writer that can get to the point and quantify very quickly. And I think you'd want to quantify 2 things, because again, if the cover letter doesn't grab right away, I probably won't even look at the resume. And so it's blocked maybe a very impressive resume. The 2 things would be, you'd want to very early on, as Anthony said in the beginning, state something about the company you're applying for. I recognize that the Minnesota Twins stand for this, and this is what they're striving. Even if you're repeating something on their websites, it's one of their marketing lines. And then you'll say, in my background, this is how I line up with that philosophy, and I am pleased to submit my resume. So now you've just tied in why I should look further. You know me, and you're showing why you know you and why it's a good fit. That's what has to be on there.
Yeah, the cover letter should it should actually play to your it should play to the company that you're applying for. It should play a little bit to their, it's gonna sound bad, but play a little bit toward their ego. It's like you're telling them what they're good at, and you recognize that they're good at this, and this is how you would fit into that. Because if not, like the reason why I said Jim answer first is because a lot of times cover letters just don't do it for me. I like to get right to the meat and potatoes of what's going on. And so if I look at a cover letter, it's either gonna turn me off the application or turn me to where I want to see more, and it'll be within 10 seconds of when I look at it.
Yeah,
I would say if it's
absolutely.
media or PR, they should do a cover letter. That's one thing. If it's not sales, media or PR for sure, because you want to see that writing.
Exactly. So if writing is a key component, I like that, Jim. And I would echo exactly what both of you said. Moving on to kind of some of the do's and don'ts, I think we get this experience a lot where people reach out, whether they're currently in college, whether they just applied for the job, whether they're just trying to network via LinkedIn or via email. Oftentimes, people struggle finding the right way to introduce themselves. How and when is it best to reach out to an employer as an introduction? Also, who should you be reaching out to?
I can jump in.
Yeah, go ahead, Jim, and then I'll circle back, Jim, once you do it.
Yep, we'll keep taking turns with the play-by-play and color and vice versa, and Brian ties it all in. It's perfect. I'll give you a don't, which then means a do. That then you need to do something. When you're applying and you're reaching out to an employer, don't sit and wait. Don't sit and wait. And what I mean by that is maybe you've submitted an application through an online system, and then you're just going to wait. Oh, I never heard. Well, to Brian's point, 250 resumes at the Twins, or even with some of the tier 2 sports that we look at here, man, we're busy, hundreds of emails every day. It's up to you to organize me to want to take a look at your resume if I'm the person doing it. So you want to find out who that contact person is, and don't wait. Submit it. If you haven't heard within 3 days, do some type of outreach, a phone call or email, because then what that tells to me is, of these 100 resumes, wow, here's a self-starter, here's a go-getter. And then finally, if you're not hearing back from me, the person you contact in the company is PR Communications, because that person always gets back, because that's what they're paid to do, to have public relations and communicate. And if they hear, wow, there's a really eager person out there that really wants to work for our company, hey, Jim, you should take a look at this person.
Yeah, I agree. You got to reach out, and I wouldn't wait like 2-3 days. I'm submitting. I'm going to wait a day, and the next day I'm going to send something out saying, hey, just wanted to make sure you got a chance to look over, really interested, something just so it puts it on top of their mind, because like Brian and Jim is alluding to, we may get 100. And usually when you're trying to hire right away. So you're going to start looking right away. If a person does not do anything to kind of let them know, like, hey, I'm really interested, that one little email might put you right to the top.
Yeah, and I like you both brought up the fact of not waiting and to take a peek behind the curtain. No joke, I was actually the very last person to interview for my current role with the Twins. So you never know what point of the process an employer might be in. So it's important to follow up as soon as possible. I think it's important also to understand when their busy season is and what time of day might be best for them. Again, that's probably just a guess on your part, but if you happen to know or in the know, then it might be helpful to reach out to them early on, like before hours or even after hours, so they come into it the next day. Email or LinkedIn is fine. Use a subject line that catches somebody's attention, right? Not Brian Vanden Bosch resume or not inside sales representative position. Grab my attention, right? I get so many of these emails, and then I just move them to our resume folder, right? They don't stand out. They don't grab my attention. Also, note on the job description who you're going to be reporting to, and try to identify who's in that current role with the company you're applying for. I've gotten a lot of emails asking me about internships with the Twins. when our Twins internships report directly to our group sales manager and our retention sales manager, and they say it directly on the description. Now, I forward it over to the correct individual, much like people in HR do, like you mentioned, Jim, but not everybody's going to be willing to do that. So just be mindful of who you're actually going to be reporting to and reach out to that person. Moving on to where to apply, I think some of you may be familiar if you're in the industry with some of these options. Teamwork Online is probably the most prominent location where sports jobs are featured. It's more along the lines of colleges and actual sports teams rather than your park districts and high school athletics, different things like that. The Clubhouse, which is under the umbrella of the Sports Business Solutions and Bob Hammer, is a great place there. Started a little over a year ago with a job posting. So you can find some great jobs there. Again, focusing on the team side of sport. Indeed.com, which is a popular website for all sorts of jobs, does have a sports section, focusing both on teams and in general sports. So sports psychologists, your physical therapists, your things outside of necessarily working for a team. Workinsports.com and Brian Clapp, who I've had the fortunate pleasure to work with, is another location that focuses both on the team side and the recreational side. Jobsinsports.com is also very similar. And then finally, some teams like the Twins, we utilize our own internal job board. So you'd have to go on the website, and you can see there on the bottom of our website is the job opportunities tab. But for you guys, I know Anthony and Jim, both of your organizations, the Sky and the Hartford Athletic, are using Teamwork Online.
Absolutely. Yeah, Teamwork Online is a great resource for us. Usually I can go through and click through and go through them in about, a bunch of them really quick. That's the reason why I like that site.
Absolutely. So moving on to sort of the interview process. And, one of the questions I get asked a lot, I'm sure you guys have gotten it as well, but what specific qualities do you look for in candidates, and how telling are they of future success?
All right, I'm going to try to make this as turnkey as possible. What I look for is untrainable things. Like I know the things that I can train. The qualities that I'm looking for is a person a go-getter? Are they do they control the things that they can control, like their resume, they're showing up on time for their interview, the stuff that they can control? Because I can so much, show a person how to make a phone call, how to do a sale. The things that I'm not going to be able to train are the qualities that I'm looking for. Are you a go-getter? Do you have a can-do attitude? Are you reaching out, to try to make sure that this opportunity happens for you? So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think building on that as well, the qualities of a successful candidate is, I think every candidate should bring some level of leadership or leadership desire. Not that everyone necessarily wants to aspire to run a department or run a division, but honestly, every position in the company has empowerment and has leadership skills, where that translates into I'm not hiring potentially another intern type quality person, which interns are fantastic, but the interns that then really stand out are the ones that are self-starters, are leaders, are building up others around them. And so the same thing, if you're looking for a paid position, I want someone that is going to display to me early on, I'm not going to wait for you to tell me what to do. Tell me what the role is and watch me go and get started and involve my teammates and really help the company.
Absolutely. I both of those sentiments. I think we've all been part of interviews where the candidate blew us away and it made sense that to hire that individual, and then all of a sudden they ended up flopping in the position itself for one reason or another. And then on the other hand, I've been part of interviews where the candidate, they are just bad at interviewing, and you could tell that, but there was something about them that made you want to hire them and give them a chance. And then they ended up proving you right in the long run, and they just may be bad at interviewing. I like it very similar to standardized testing, where you may be an intelligent individual, but you just are not good at taking a standardized test. Ultimately, for me, and people have heard me talk before, there's three qualities I really look for. The first one being passion, and do you have a passion for the product you sell, and not for sports necessarily, but the product you sell. And more importantly, if I'm interviewing you for a sales position, why are you passionate about sales itself? What drives you to want to do sales? For example, we were in Chicago and we'd have basketball players that really love basketball, but they came in and they didn't give respect to the women's game. And it was showcased in how they sold. People didn't believe that they believed in the product they were selling, and they were not able to find success in that manner. The second is coachability, the ability to adapt and learn from your seniors, from mentors within the industry, as well as your team. And then finally, persistence. We just talked about kind of following up on interviews, the persistent factor of understanding you're going to have to reach out to people again and again from a sales standpoint and stay on top of them in determining whether or not they're a fit for your product. So I want to cover some of the common mistakes that reps make. What are some of the ones you've seen candidates make specifically during the interview process?
Either way, happy to go first, Anthony, or jump in, whatever you like.
Yeah, I'll go first. Brian, right away, I got a couple things right away that just are really big, like red flags for me. One is like your title, foot in the door. When I hear a person say that they're trying to get their foot in the door, to me, that is them saying that they don't want to do the job that they're applying for. They're just trying to, I want to give me an opportunity to try this. I really want to get into something else, but let me get my foot in the door with you. The other thing that I don't, it's really common. People do it all the time, so don't feel bad when you hear this. When people say, I ask them a question, the first thing they say to me is, well, honestly, and then they start to answer the question. Because to me, it's like, well, I don't want you to lie to me, so why would you start off with honestly before you answer my question? Unless it's like a gap filler for me. So for me, it's like those two things are usually, now I know that people get nervous in interviews and they do it all the time, but those are two things that I kind of look for, some really quick common mistakes.
Yeah, I think too, especially in the world of sports, I mean, it's a people-centric business. We're in the business of entertainment. And so common mistakes can be someone coming in and not really giving great eye contact, either whether when they're speaking or especially too when someone's speaking to them. You really want that eye contact because you envision then, wow, this is how this person would represent our brand at a concourse table, engaging with fans or talking to others. And then also to make sure on one hand that you're not overselling yourself. Can almost come across as desperate, or like Anthony said, you're overselling yourself so much that it really is more the foot in the door instead of really having a logical conversation. So you want to be able to present confidently your skills. You definitely have to do that. But I think the other is to make sure you take an interest in me. And that's not about me, but what you're trying to do is you're trying to get me to envision, you're trying to get Anthony and Brian to envision, is this someone that I would want relating to our customers and our fan base that would draw others? Well, of course it is. He's taken an interest in me. It's not all just about himself. That's who we want
here. Yeah, Anthony, once you pointed out the honesty factor, I've noticed that in a lot of interviews that I've done. For me, there's on top of what you both already mentioned, not being dressed properly, and not saying you have to go full suit and tie, but at least be, business professional to a certain extent. Don't wear flip-flops. Don't, carry yourself in a professional manner. Not understanding the job expectations. That's one of the things I try to ask during interviews. What are your expectations of this job? And they have no idea what they're actually applying for, especially when they're clearly marked on the job description. Not stating what exactly makes you qualified or a good fit for the job. Not asking questions at the end of the interview. We want to see what sort of interest you have in the role and what you're curious about. And then using too many word fillers such as or like on a consistent basis. Like you can't start a single sentence without saying the word It gets to the point where that's all I end up noticing is how often you say that. So, and that might just be me, but it takes away from the interview overall.
Yeah. Yeah.
Finally, yeah, I just talked about questions to ask employers. What are some questions you've been asked that have really stood out to you, or what questions would you like candidates to ask?
A good question to ask is when a person asks, what does a day working in this position look like? Like when they say, can you take me through a day on what it would look like? I think that's a good question, because what they're trying to figure out is, I take this, is that they're trying to figure out, are they going to like working here in that day? So when it turns to more about, hey, I'm not just trying to get a paycheck, I'm trying to see if I'm going to like this job. Those are great questions for me to ask.
Mhm. I've got a couple really great ones that, as I've asked them myself in my own interview process for the positions I've had, almost always the interviewer is like, wow, that's a really great question, because again, it brings you that much closer. One of them would be, there are definitely qualifications, right, that one's looking for, and that lends to experience. But I think as you're hearing from all three of us, you eventually end up hiring the person. You really hire the person first, because as Anthony said, a lot of the rest is trainable. So with that, a great question to ask as a candidate is to say to that person, I understand the qualifications of the position. Tell me the qualities that you're looking for out of the individual that would fit this role, that's going to help make your organization that much more successful. Someone says that to me, and it's like, I'm going, wow, they want to make sure that they're a cultural fit for us and where we want to go. And then also by asking that question, you know how to formulate a lot of the rest of your answers throughout the rest of the interview. Another one that's really a fantastic one, is important, is certainly when you're an employee, you really want to have people leave people, and we know that. And you want to have a direct report that you feel on one hand has your back, but at the same time, as they said at Highland Ventures, is willing to keep you out of the rough and have that tough discussion. It goes both ways. I want to have an employee as well that's invested in me, so that they have my back. So a great question to ask that person, that if they're going to be your direct report, is, Jim, how are you measured? How are you evaluated with the Hartford Athletic? Because if we're going to work together, I want to make sure I'm aligned with that same vision, to help make sure that not only the department does, but you meet your goals, because that's what our working relationship needs to be. And all of a sudden I'm like, wow, they're caring about my career path as well. This is someone I want to work with, and we can grow together.
Excellent. And we'll touch on some of those questions a little bit later as well. You guys took some of the questions I wrote down, asking about the culture, asking, someone in leadership to describe the culture, understanding next steps in the interview process, showing your eagerness to get to that next level, growth opportunities that exist within the organization. The one I've always utilized is asking something along the lines of, what is one thing that you think your team is lacking or needs to improve in? And after receiving said answer, if you can answer exactly how you can improve that specifically, or how you cater to that weakness and how you can improve the team overall, to me, that's thinking on your feet. That's, okay, now you're going to solve a problem for me out of the gate. And that just stands out in my mind. So that's something I always like to ask in interviews to people that interview me. Just some follow-up tips really quickly, because we want to move forward with this. I think, people always talk about, a lot of people don't follow up whatsoever. I think a handwritten letter immediately after the interview, preferably to each interviewer, is key, if possible, if the timing permits. If they're going to be making a decision within the next 2 days, probably better to send an email first, just to make sure that they know your appreciation for the time that was taken for them. But otherwise, a handwritten letter still goes a long way nowadays. And I know most people keep the handwritten letters they receive, whether or not the person is hired. But I'll say, we recently had 2 individuals and as finalists for a job, and one wrote a handwritten letter. They were honestly on the same exact level. And then that handwritten letter got that person the job. So it does go a long way. Finally, I want to talk about determining the right organization. A lot of people out there focus on, all right, I just want to get any job in sales. I want to get any job in sales with any team. I just want to make it in the industry, or I want to make sure I work for a Big Four team. And it doesn't matter what the team is. They just will take the first job offered to them no matter what. And I want to talk a little about determining the right organization. So When joining a new organization, what exactly are you guys looking for when it comes to culture, and how can you actually determine it before accepting the position? Anthony, you talked a little bit earlier about reading reviews, talking to people who've worked for the team. Anything else that people can look out for or specifically ask?
Yeah, just overall, like you have to. My interview process is more. I'm trying to find out if I'm interviewing for a job, if the culture of what they do is going to fit into me as a person. So how often do you do reviews? Do you do annual reviews? Do you do 60-day, 30-day reviews? Because how often am I going to be finding out if I'm doing something right or if I'm doing something wrong? So it's all the same things that you're saying. If you're going to work for an organization, the right organization is going to be giving you reviews, giving you feedback, and like Jim said, not being afraid to have those tough discussions with you, knowing that the ultimate outcome is to invoke change and to have you be a little bit better.
Yeah, and I think just understanding what are the growth opportunities with the culture. You know, if you have someone that's applying that's concerned about that, you know that that's someone that's really going to be highly motivated. And if a company can answer that question properly, that we are in a growth mode. You know, the Twins have been around forever, yet I've visited you, Brian. I got to know the organization. That's an organization that is constantly thinking ahead. I mean, a fantastic organization to be with, as is the Sky, and which is, you know, why we've all been there a long time, and you know, still bleed that blue and yellow for sure.
Yeah, so I would echo both of those statements. You know, we talked about culture earlier in the call. Anthony brought it up. I think the one thing I would add and you know, this may just be in my point of view, but I would look at the average tenure of the staff, especially, you know, leadership. How long have they been with the organization? Is there quick turnover with the organization? I'm not going to name names, but there are definitely organizations out there that will hire 40 to 50 inside sales reps, and they just churn and burn them, where if you aren't hitting your goals the first 3 months, they give up on you. And I want an organization that believes in me and believes in the hires that they're making and puts their trust in the individuals hired, and that aren't necessarily on a sink or swim mentality. And so I think, you know, having worked with the Sky and now with the Twins, I think, you know, that those culture have been highlighted. I'm sure, Jim, you're going to create the culture or implement a culture that's great with the Hartford Athletic as well. Ultimately, when it comes to leadership, what should you be looking for in team leadership? What qualities to you guys make up the best leaders that individuals should look for?
A leader is going to be the person who is, they're not just looking to be the person that's going to be the best person on your team. They're someone who is, they share their secrets to make other people better. So when you're looking for a leader, you're looking for qualities like that they've done in their other job. They're looking to not just do the job that they have, but like Jim said, they're asking, hey, what's that growth path look like? How do I get to that next level? It's not a person who is just happy with doing the job that they do. It's a person that is doing a great job, but also they're passing on that knowledge and they're looking to make other people better. So.
Mm-hmm. I think too, if you think about leadership, really to lead is to serve, you know, and if you think of even top levels of leadership, right? You look at generals in the Army, you look at presidents and heads of state, you look at clergy. They all say that phrase, I'm so proud to serve my country. I'm so proud to serve constituents. I'm so proud to serve God. And so you look at a leader as someone who wants to serve others and wants to build up others around them, because then they become that person that others want to follow, without a doubt.
Yep.
Absolutely. You know, I just had a couple quick notes. You know, leaders who are invested in the overall growth of their team members and not just simply hitting their sales goals or their ultimate goals. Someone who's willing to actually go back into the into battle with their sales reps and actually go on meetings with them or attend meetings with them and get their hands dirty once again. Someone that will always have your back, and ultimately, I think, Anthony, we worked through this, is someone who's ultimately happy once you leave the organization to go on to your next role. Quick story, I was unfortunately was made aware that one of my previous leaders tanked one of my job interviews because they did not want me to leave the organization. And that, to me, I lost all respect and trust for that individual. And, that's why I appreciate, Anthony, all the leadership you provided in helping me get to that next level. And I think that's something a leader should always encourage. Finally, ultimately, growth opportunities. I think just, again, we talked about it a little bit, so we don't have to dive into it again. Just ultimately looking at growth opportunities based on the tenure that people have in the organization. How many of the higher ups have been promoted from within? So just kind of do that research on LinkedIn or asking those questions in the interview process. Finally, starting out your new job is kind of the last topic we'll cover before we get to questions. Some of the, just understanding some of the expectations set forth before you. I think we've all been part of situations where people come in and all of a sudden they're asked to do certain things and they start questioning why they do that. And it was, well, I thought this was explained in the job description and interview process, and they just wanted the job. They actually don't want to do what's being asked of them. So I think, having those sort of expectations when you come to the job and understanding what they are both ways, right? Understanding what the employer is looking out of from you, but also they should be understanding what your expectations are of them as leadership. That's one of the things I always like to ask on interviews to candidates is, what are your expectations of your leaders, so that we know how to properly manage, coach, and train you. I think ultimately, you have to be yourself. We talk about that on when you're on the phones or when you're selling. Don't be somebody you're not, because that is eventually going to come out in how you carry yourself around the office or around your coworkers. And you're being hired based on how you portray yourself in the interview. So you can certainly sell yourself in an interview as somebody you're not and get hired, but that's quickly going to be noticed, and you're probably not going to be on the best terms with leadership or your peers if you pretend to be somebody you're not, and eventually your true self comes out. Finally, the last question for you guys: what are some common pitfalls you see new employees make when they are starting out?
They don't recognize that in order to make an omelet, you're going to have to crack some eggs. And so what they do is they do a lot of research because they're trying not to make mistakes. And so they do all the research so that they won't make mistakes. And instead of saying, I'm going to jump in here and I'm going to make some mistakes, but mistakes are not bad as long as you learn something from them. So trying to figure out all the little details so you won't make a mistake, sometimes it'll put you behind. The person who does the best in the position that whatever position that they're going for, is that they're going to jump in and know, I'm not going to be great at this right away, but I'm going to jump in here and figure out what I know, what I don't know, what mistakes I'm going to make, and I'm going to learn from them. So my common pitfall would be waiting to jump in instead of just, let's jump in and figure out what's going on.
Mm-hmm. And Anthony, I like my eggs sunny side up. So with that, some of the common pitfalls are, bringing a sense of nervousness to work, or even in the early going, which is normal. You're lost. It's stressful. It's exciting, but stressful at the same time. And it can start to cause some negativity or some excuse making. And that's something that's going to be a pitfall and a recipe for disaster, as opposed to a positive person that if there's a challenge, they want to talk about that challenge and they want to solve it in a really positive manner. That kind of sunny side up demeanor, then we know they're going to succeed.
One of the adages that we always like to use is be comfortable with the uncomfortable, and understand that you're going to be uncomfortable at certain times with the job. And Anthony, to your point about willing to jump in, I always say I'd rather have someone make an aggressive mistake and learn from it than be too afraid to make said mistake. As long as you don't make the same mistake twice, which is always my mantra, you understand that you're going to make mistakes. I know I'm going to make mistakes, and I know my team is going to make mistakes. How do we learn from them, and how do we grow from those mistakes? I think the final thing I want to touch on before we get to questions is, I think the importance of getting to know your coworkers and fitting into culture. Again, being yourself is important. I liken it to the old prison adage of kind of finding the biggest bully in the yard on the first day, except in this case, in my first day, I'm going to go and I'm going to find who the best seller is on the team, and I'm going to try to get to know them. I'm going to try to get to know what makes them successful. You know, if if they necessarily aren't willing to help me out, they probably aren't cut out for a leadership role. And thus I would move down the line to the second most successful seller on the team until I find somebody that is willing to kind of show me the ropes in that role and what makes them so successful.
Yeah, I agree. You gotta, when you come in, you gotta know that everybody eyes are on you when you're first starting a new job. Like everybody's watching you. So the best thing that you can do is to open yourself up to have a relationship with your coworkers, talking to them, going in their office, trying to spend your lunches with them, learn some things that because in order for them to trust you with what they're doing that's made them successful, they have to know you and like you as a person. And so you have to open yourself up to get them to know your personality so that you're able to say, hey, talk to me about this spreadsheet or how you're doing this process or how you're doing that. Because if they don't trust you with that information, they're not gonna, your coworkers have to know you and trust you in order to give you that information.
Perfect. Well, again, appreciate you guys taking the time today. We're going to move on to the question and answer session. So again, for those on the call, I'm going to exit out of this so I can view some of the Q&A. For those on the call, you can use the Q&A at the bottom of the screen, or you can use the chat function on the side to chat in with the panelists. So we have a few questions that were brought in previously. I think we kind of touched on these, but I still want to address them again. You got about 15 minutes here. You've hopped on a call and networked, and they say to keep in touch. When is the right time to reach out, and how do you go about it? So I'm assuming that, you know, this is somebody who you've simply hopped on a call to network with a leader, and they say to keep in touch. What would you say is probably the next step in that process?
You can go first, Anthony.
If you're saying if a person asks me, keep in touch.
No, so if you tell an interviewer, or not an interviewer,
okay, gotcha.
You tell them to keep in touch, when would be a modest time to reach out to you or anything of that nature?
I would go the next day or the day after, like 2 days, 1 or 2 days, no more than 1 or 2 days. You want to do it when it's top of mind to them.
Yeah.
If you've networked with a person, you've taken their business card, you've talked to them, don't wait longer than a day or two to reach back out and say, hey, because if you wait a week and say, hey, we met at this networking event, chances are they've been to 3 or 4 different networking events. They don't have a clue who you are. But if you go the next day or the day after, it's still fresh in their memory.
Yeah, and I think to stay top of mind, on top of that first follow-up is the continued follow-up, and not just being too persistent, but maybe you see something about their team, their organization in the news, or maybe you hear their name mentioned in the news. Shoot them an email that says, hey, congrats on this, or hey, I saw the Sky did this. It just shows that you're paying attention, and it creates a better relationship.
Yep, true.
After that call as well, how should you go about communicating again? Should you text them? Should you message them on LinkedIn, ask for their email? If you've only met them and you have their business card, I think it's probably best, I would say, to email them would probably be most sufficient, right?
Yeah, so true. Yeah, I would email.
So finally, you've had a call with them, and you actually get to know the hiring manager. So you end up meeting them out in person once again. What's the best way to conversate with them, knowing that you whether you've interviewed them for the job and you got turned down, or you've just interviewed with them and you're still waiting to hear, and you happen to come across them in public?
Hold 1 second. I want to add to that last question or the last comment about email. Yeah, I think absolutely start with an email, because what email does is probably the person you're reaching out to and you're following up with is incredibly busy. And none of us in sports work 9-to-5 jobs. So it does allow time for that person to get back, maybe even off hours and things like that, or have certain email times. At the same time, a lot of people that are in executive roles can have days of getting 125 emails a day. And then you travel for 2 days, and then all of a sudden you come back and your inbox has 300 and 350 emails you have to sort through, where phone calls and voicemails, I may get 1 a day, 2 a day, 3 a day tops, versus like hundreds. So start with email. And then if you don't hear, follow up with that phone call, because you got a better chance that you'll jump out. Sorry, I just wanted to throw that in.
Oh, no worries. So you go to a career fair, you end up being a hiring manager in person. What's the best way to conversate with them? That I would say just be natural as normal. Reference when you've talked and introduce yourself like you would anybody else. I don't think there's anything necessarily you need to do any different. I think it's okay to approach them and ask about job openings. If maybe you haven't talked about a job opening, ask them about it, whether they're the direct hiring manager for that role that you're looking for, or who the best person in the organization should be to reach out to. If you're looking to get in that specific, industry or role, you can also, maybe you want to work for, basketball, for instance, and ask them what contacts they have in other sports that they might be able to introduce them to. It doesn't hurt to ask.
Yeah.
The final question that we got before this call was really for Jim. Jim is from a Hartford Athletic fan, and he believes the team can attract a larger fan base. How can you tap into the market of the 18 to 25-year-olds like myself in Connecticut, the ones who wake up for Premier League games on Saturdays but may not know about or want to attend a Hartford Athletic game for whatever reason?
Mm-hmm. No, I think it's a great question, and the fact that someone already likes soccer hopefully makes that even a little bit easier for us. But then that being said, without necessarily stereotyping a similar group, you definitely have to recognize that 18 to 25-year-old has some key qualities that you want to make sure that you're reaching out to and you're conveying to. Those key qualities are everything is a value proposition, right? I mean, it really is. The disposable income is incredibly important, as well as everything really needs to have a meaning. Obviously, if someone's waking up early on a Saturday morning, that team has meaning to them. And very experiential generation. So it has to be just more than about the soccer organization, because you also have to plan for bad games, bad years, and things like that. So making sure that you're reaching out in a real turnkey way, whether that's going to be social media, text campaigns, something that's very simple and quick, as well as letting them know there's an experience of some amazing tailgate opportunities, or there's some amazing, really fun activation opportunities for that 18 to 25-year-old. And oh, by the way, we've got some world-class soccer as well in your backyard.
Excellent. So we're going to go into the question and answer portion. So if you have any, we have a handful of questions here. First one coming, I currently work as an AE for a junior hockey team. What advice could you give me for standing out when interviewing for roles with professional organizations? I continuously become a final candidate, but never hired.
Great eye contact. Be yourself. You got to make sure that you be yourself. In this industry, what I look for in a salesperson is someone who's real. And if I could, in having a conversation with you, I can tell that you're trying to be something. You're trying too hard to be something that you're not. It's not genuine, and you can see right through it. And the other thing is, Brian hit on this a little bit. Make sure you're dressed for the position that you want. You can't go into it half-heartedly. So put the effort in your presentation so that you stand out to that person.
I think too, to be that final tipping point to stand out, if you're getting that far in the interview, but not quite, over that final hump, is the couple of areas. If you're in that final stage, you're talking to the right person. You're talking to probably the most influential decision maker in that process. Even if it's the same person third time through, you're now at that tipping point of getting that person to flip that switch. So back to the couple initial things that were mentioned before, and even that I mentioned, is one, if you haven't done it and you're getting that stage and that person's wondering if you're going to be the right fit for this position, they think you are. One, again, asking what qualities they're looking for, as well as how is that person going to be measured, so that you can let them know you're going to be there to make sure that you can grow together, and you're going to support that as well. Because then that way I know, wow, of the three candidates, this person's really in tune to my direction, the company's direction, his or her direction. The other, I would say with that, is that, a lot of teams, even look at, again, the Minnesota Twins. Everyone knows the Twins. Twins have been around forever. And the reason why they have been around forever and why they keep growing is they're always thinking creativity. They're not doing the same thing over and over and over every single year and resting on laurels. So we're looking for creative thinkers. that stand out as well. Someone who usually works for minor league or what have you, you have to be a little bit more creative to go up against the kind of David Goliath. So make sure you bring to the table your creativity and why and how you're going to bring it as well.
Absolutely. Speaking from experience, the Twins, for me, the 7th try was the charm. I ended up being in the final 2 or 3 candidates for management roles with Big Four sports teams prior to this. And I'd consistently reach out and I'd directly ask, why didn't I get chosen for the position? What was preventing me from being your number 1 candidate? And understanding, not holding anything against them, because that's their opinion and they're entitled to their opinion, but understand what I needed to continue to work on to make myself the best candidate possible. Additionally, there were times where teams would not get back to me for 2-3 weeks at a time. And at that point, looking back, I realized I probably didn't want to work for those teams if they didn't care about their image and how they relate to the people wanting to work for them. So it's important to notate how quickly the employer gets back to you as well, because that's probably going to translate into your working environment. Next question, how would you advise a graduating senior navigate the current hiring freeze? I've networked well during the hiatus and feel confident I will be in a good position once things return to normal. However, I am now wondering what my strategy should be in the meantime. I think you hit on that the first couple sentences. I think continuing to network, believe it or not, hiring managers probably, they, as little time as they probably have more free time now while everything is on hold. There's a lot of planning going on, but ultimately ask them to network for 15 minutes. Ask them for 10 minutes of their time to network. And if they don't want to take the time or they don't give you a time, again, they're probably not somebody that's going to be invested in your success in the long term. And so continue to network and reach out to people, kind of send feelers out there every couple of weeks. Always be looking out on job boards, job sites. Know who's connected to those jobs. So if your connections on LinkedIn have to be connected with individuals with that organization and you've recently networked with them, ask for an introduction.
I think too that right now is a time where companies and businesses and even in our own individual personal life, we've been forced to reassess 100% what's important to us, what has meaning to us, and recognizing that we can't do business as usual anymore. And so again, I go back to that creativity, but more and more companies and organizations are having to think outside the box. They're having to experiment in new forms of doing business. And as you think about that, you start to think and evaluate with your current team as you evolve forward, who do you want on that team as we move forward? And with that, you're going to want those creative thinkers that are bringing new ideas to the table. And so if you do have that opportunity, and you have that opportunity even by how you network, and you show that kind of quality, you're probably going to be the right person for the future as we move ahead here.
I want to be respectful of your times. We're at the hour mark, but we have about 8 more questions that people have asked. You guys have another 10 minutes?
Yeah, I do.
Absolutely.
If you want to stay,
Right.
sure.
So next, for somebody, so this is outside of the sales realm, for someone who would like to get into creative services or digital media, what advice would you give to expand their career in the sports world? Should we link our portfolio to a resume? My initial thought would be absolutely yes. Again, I don't think most of us encounter those sorts of resumes, so we can't speak to any, but if I put myself in the position of a hiring manager in that role, I absolutely would want to see the portfolio on the resume. I don't know if you feel any differently.
Yeah, I think the exact same thing. If you're, creative services, digital media, they probably want to see some of your work. And so I would definitely, if you have the opportunity to attach it so they can look at it.
And again, similar to sales, pick the brain of other people currently in that role in the industry, but maybe a different team than you're applying for.
And also too, everywhere you can, where you can measure what you do, that makes it stand out as well, because there are a lot of people that want it. That's probably the hardest, I think, to get into marketing and get into creative services, because there's very few positions. And if you can then quantify what you've done, who it reached, that absolutely helps it stand
Next question. I've worked for in sports for 2 years. I've interned for 5 years in the government before getting my big break this year. I've kept in touch with Brian and other managers in sports. Should I return to sports or continue the growth with the federal government? So I think that ultimately comes down to your opinion and what you love the most. You know, in government, I can't speak to what government is like. I would assume you probably get a larger income with the government. So it all depends on if you truly enjoy what you do. I would, you know, if you're smart with your money and you know, I think the most important thing is loving what you do. And so if you enjoy going to work every day with the federal government, by all means do that. Sports will always be around. You can always attend sporting events. You can still network with people in sports. They'll always be there outside of an epidemic, but you know, do something that you love. And I think that's what's most important.
Absolutely. You have to go with knowing that the pay will come later, but start off doing something. I mean, if you're financially responsible, find out doing something that you love to do, because the pay will come in time. If you love to do the job, that'll show through, and then your pay scale will grow exponentially because you love to do the job. But if you get a job that you don't like to do and you're just doing it for pay, that again will come through, and over time, someone else who loves to do the job that you're doing will get the job that you're doing because they love to do it.
Yeah, and I think government versus sports is a little bit of, if you're more of a conservative-minded person, and I don't mean, you know, Republican, Democrat, conservative, but I mean conservative-minded, where it's important to have that, real important to have that job security, real important to have kind of that financial path. I think government is a little bit of a longer play for someone, where in sports, you are constantly going, you're constantly hustling, you're constantly pivoting, you're constantly changing, you're constantly being stimulated and driven. And if that's what excites you and fires you up, then I'd go that route without a doubt, because you can create your own security, where the other, it's kind of sitting there for you.
Excellent. Moving on, next question. When you see a resume that has experience in different sports, do you see that as someone who's jumped around too much, or is that something that will make them stand out?
Depends on how long they were at the jobs. Like they've done different sports, that's good, but a jump around would be like you're here for 3 months, then you're there for 2, you've done, you know, but if you're a length of time at each one, the sport doesn't really matter. It's going to be, it's the same job. You're selling the experience, so it's the same job.
Mm-hmm. I think multiple sports. I mean, that's right. You definitely don't want to look as a jumper, because, you know, you're looking to hire for some loyalty. At the same time, we also recognize in college that you're going to have internships that will be a little bit limited in time, 3 months here, 3 months there. So you can probably do that a little bit more. But I would say having a varied background is very helpful. My position with the Hartford Athletic, I was really the second candidate, and the owner told me in the final process, said, you know, my dilemma is you're my second choice. I was like, okay. And he told me why. And he said, well, here's why. He goes, I have another candidate that has run professional soccer teams before. And my argument back to that was, well, that's probably going to get you off to a faster start than it would with me, without a doubt. Yet we both know how challenging the USL can be and the Tier 2 teams can be. So to me, I would think that you would want to also bring a varied experience that I can show case studies in women's basketball, men's lacrosse, in tennis, and in other areas that are going to take us even to a whole new level. And I'll learn soccer quickly, believe me. And that was the tipping point.
Next question. We have someone who mentioned he's the box office manager of the Southern Maryland Blue Crabs, independent baseball team. In his role, he does a mix of sales, accounting, and customer service, and looking to take the next step in his career. What's the best way to show specializations to an MLB organization? I can't speak specifically for an MLB organization. You know, I think I can speak more so for just overall sales. I think just kind of following the same logic that we brought today in how to handle yourself during the interview process. I think sometimes when people talk about wanting to work in Major League Baseball, to me, that might come as sort of a turnoff, right? If your only goal is to work in Major League Baseball, that might be sort of a turnoff. Some of the red flags we also get is people that ask about interactions with players. We don't get interactions with players. And, sometimes nothing's guaranteed with the job. So that's sort of a turnoff for us. So I would not necessarily say that it's your dream to work in Major League Baseball. I would talk about your passion for what you're specifically applying for. So whether it's sales or accounting or box office management, talk about why you enjoy doing that first. And then when you get the job, then you could be all giddy about working for the organization. I would not showcase that in the interview, because we get that all the time, no matter what organization you're with.
Yeah, don't show your hand. I agree. Go with what you talk about the position more than you talk about that particular organization.
Echoing your sentiment, we can go on. Those are great.
Another good one here. How often should I keep in touch with a hiring manager if I'm denied for a position the first time around? Is it annoying when a candidate touches base periodically to express interest even after being denied? I could say from my experience, there have been people that have not necessarily been the best candidate for us. They get a year of experience doing whatever they're doing, and they come back much more polished, and they keep in touch with us throughout the year. I think, again, to my point earlier, I think it's important to keep in touch with those individuals. If they are going to give you the time to respond to you and be eager to help you out, they're probably not the best leaders to be working for.
Yeah, I think absolutely reach back out. And I think you already alluded to it, Ryan, but if you don't get the position, see if they'll give you that 1 or 2 minutes as to why you didn't and what you need to work on. And if you get that answer, you let them know, I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. You're going to hear back from me in 3 months, in 6 months, because I'm going to work on that, and I'm going to let you know how I've really improved in those areas. Boy, that's someone I'm going to take a second look at for sure.
You have a few more questions here. Someone who asked, in the hiring process, when is the right time to ask about salary, commissions, benefits, etc.? What's the best way to ask? I think that's something that people are always nervous about. Some people will have the opinion of don't ask for it whatsoever. Some people will say, yes, it's important to know that that's something that's important to you.
I feel like you should, a lot of that, salary, commission, benefits, you got to ask that, but it would be like that final interview. I don't think it's something you'd ask in an initial interview. And plus, if you're doing your work, doing your research, you're going to have a base of where you think that salary should be at before you're going to search online. You're going to do who else has held this job, comparable positions. So you kind of have a base of where that salary should be at. It's not bad to ask that question, but in the final interview process versus being in the beginning.
And I want to give a reverse that's really important and really helpful as well too, is that sometimes the reverse happens, right? You get really savvy organizations that might ask you that question in the very first interview because they want to look for a qualifier or disqualifier. Is this person unrealistic and think they're too expensive for us, or are they not valuing themselves enough? So if you get that question in the early interview, like Anthony, it needs to get to the end. So dodge it. So the best way to dodge it, no, honestly, the best way to dodge it, and usually you'll probably, if you're going to be the person, you're going to get compensated on the high end of what that budget is, regardless of your experience, is if someone asks you in the early going, I would respond by saying, well, listen, I think right now at this stage, I think we're in that mutual vetting process where you're making sure I'm absolutely the right fit for your organization, and I'm making sure that I'm the right fit for your organization as well. And if we get to that stage, I'm confident that the Chicago Sky is going to pay me market value for my skills.
And then you just earned yourself a 5K bump, right?
Typically what happens. Yep.
So I think this is one, specifically for Jim, but we can answer as well. Somebody that currently accepted a new role as a partnership coordinator with a USL League One team, who held the position for 2 weeks before being furloughed because of COVID-19. What can you suggest that could make me stand out during this time with this team or a different team? So somebody that when we get back to normal, they may be rehired on, but right now they may not necessarily be working.
Great question, because right now you're that unknown entity, and you're that unknown entity that might be that wild card that a company's looking for, but they don't know. They didn't have time. So with that, I don't mean to keep working within your company, but keep working. If you're going to be a partnership coordinator, keep studying, keep researching, keep going online, keep looking for really great activation ideas and things that are really unique and fantastic. And then once you feel you have a few things that are really special, really unique, but then apply to the USL, reach out to that hiring manager that unfortunately had to make that decision to do the furlough like so many had to, and say, you know, hey Jim, just checking in. Boy, I know these are challenging times right now. I know I'd only been with the company a couple weeks. Let me know. I'll tell you what I've been doing in the meantime is I've been doing some research. I do hope I get the opportunity with which you hired me in the first place, because here are a couple things that I see are best practices that I hope I can bring to the table when the opportunity comes for me to return. And all of a sudden I know, like, wow, this person isn't just sitting and waiting for me to hopefully hire him or her back. This person is being proactive to show, you better hire me back because look what I'm going to do.
Yeah, we got two, we'll leave time for two more questions. This is from somebody who had been in ticket sales and wants to get back into ticket sales. So they've left the industry. What advice can you give someone who wants to get back into ticket sales, and what can they leverage?
I want to get back into ticket sales. Talk about your successes. Like, you got to be able to know what those successes are. And then, like I said, I mean, like we've been saying the whole time, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Be the person that you are. Know that you're going to make some mistakes, but I'm going to jump back in here and find out if what I was doing still works or if I need to adjust what I was doing. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think too, it's a golden opportunity to show why you're even stronger now than you were originally when you were in ticket sales, by tying in the skill set that you went to and how it's going to make you that much better. I'm a perfect story example. I have always worked in sports from the day I graduated college, except for 8 years with Highland Ventures. And with the 8 years at Highland Ventures, did I learn so much about budgeting, P&Ls, people management, and other skills that I wasn't quite getting. And then when I came back into sports, I was able to tie in how those 8 years are going to make me even that much stronger of an individual returning to a skill set. So make sure you tie in your absence why you got better and stronger, that you're going to be even a stronger salesperson than you were.
All right, last two questions that we have are very similar, so I'll kind of tie them together. What are some changes, understanding what we're going through right now, what are some changes or exciting opportunities that you anticipate within the sales capacity of the sports industry as a result of this chaotic economic state? And how can candidates take advantage of these opportunities to be successful in the job?
Obviously, there's going to be a lot of changes when we, like Jim has been alluding to, like it's not going to be business as usual when we get back and doing what we're doing. But what you can do now is to set yourself up is to kind of realize that and try to, we talk about it all the time, like the way that we sell will definitely change. So you got to be able to have a forward thinker and be like, hey, I can't sell the way that I used to. My approach has to be different. There's not going to be as many, maybe there won't be as many people at a networking event as there was before. You're going to have to do research on how do I reach out? Am I doing LinkedIn Navigator? Am I doing text message? Like, you got to look outside the box on how you're going to be able to do those things in this changed environment that we're in right now. All that stuff is going to set you up for an opportunity to be successful in whatever job you do.
Yeah,
I think. Oh, go ahead, Brian.
I mean, to shed some light on it, and maybe you don't want to hear this, but there's probably going to be more candidates than ever because of the amount that were furloughed or let go. There's going to be probably a better crop of individuals going for particular jobs. So that means you need to stand out even that much more.
Without a doubt. I think too, what we're learning now, with the unfortunate situation of many organizations, even outside of sports, having to make decisions if their revenues, minimized or gone to a halt, and furloughing some, but probably not all employees, so that you can, keep preparing for the future. Working remotely like this, productivity has come straight to the forefront. I mean, if we're going to be spending right now and not having the same revenue that we thought we were because of not having soccer games, boy, the accountability of productivity is huge. And so when we come back to the office, to Brian's point, it's actually going to be more competitive. It's going to be more exciting. There's going to be more candidates out there. And at the same time, there will be less patience for someone who's not highly productive, because that's who's really stayed on the roll right now, for sure.
Yep. So one quick one that I'll answer that was in the chat. Do you feel infographic resumes that jump off the page versus a traditional resume are a recommended idea? I would say absolutely. Anything that's going to help stand out, as long as the information is relevant. So I would absolutely say anything that helps you stand out from a resume standpoint, do it, try it. It doesn't hurt, and ask for feedback from people that may have turned you down for a job if it had anything to do with your resume. Well, Jim, Anthony, appreciate you guys taking the time. Always great to catch up. For those still on the call, if you want to reach out to any of us, I'm going to put back up. I'm going to share my screen here and put up our information really quickly. And so you guys can take this down. You can reach any of us at our emails. We are always happy to stay in contact with any interested parties. If you want a copy of this webinar, I will be posting it online. You can email me directly for a copy to the link or file as well. So give some people some time. But again, Anthony, Jim, thanks again for taking the time. And we should definitely do this again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot again for the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Great job. Great organization.
All right. Thanks again, guys.
Take care.